can you tell the good people here who you are?
I'm Levi Stevenson. I'm the managing editor for Wide Right Natty Light.
Well, you missed quite a bit there. Let me fill them in further. You are Spaceman X on Twitch and PlayStation Network. You
That is
also
correct,
run,
yes.
yeah,
And
you also
Xbox.
run
Xbox primarily.
Xbox
More,
primarily.
yes,
Okay,
Xbox
I don't
primarily.
remember that from the Twitter handle. You're a alum and a engineer
Correct.
because you went to the best value engineering school in the Midwest, according to several rankings. Uh, and you run Down the Pipe and Natty Light with Marchie Murdoch and Cole Metton. I almost said Levi
Yep.
Stevenson, but that's you.
Yeah, no, that's our podcast through it's through Wide Right, but yeah, that's our
And then
podcast.
that's only one of them. You also do show and tell with Megatron,
That's correct.
and she
Actually,
is great.
this coming Tuesday. I don't know when you're airing this or not, but April 6th.
Next Monday,
Oh,
the
okay.
nightcap. That was my next question. Sorry, you're
The
jumping the gun
nightcap.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So could you tell the good folks here what the nightcap is all about?
Yeah, so the nightcap is going to be it's our weekly YouTube show that's going to be on the Wide Right YouTube page. It's going to be kind of our version of a late night show. It's going to be myself, Matthias Schwarzkopf, and then Aiden Wyatt is going to be kind of our producer / he'll jump in sometimes here and there. And we're pretty excited to do that. It's going to be lots of different stuff. It could be highlights, guest interviews, recruiting stuff, talking about beer, memes, gifts, whatever. We're just gonna have a good time with it. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be kind of our version of a late night show, which I think is it would be kind of a unique piece of content within the Cyclone media sphere.
I know it just so happens that the nightcap got introduced shortly after I asked if you wanted to be on a YouTube channel. I'm not saying that there's any theft. I'm actually just kind of happy that somebody's making YouTube content because that's how I listen to most of my podcasts.
Yeah, no, I think that's an area that you know I think Iowa State fans, generally speaking, are fairly well privileged as far as having lots and lots of content to consume between the register, between us, Cyclone Fanatic, 247. They've got quite a few sources of places, and I don't even know how many podcasts is up to now. I mean, we put out at least two a week, sometimes, show and tell when we can record. So it'd be three sometimes in some weeks. And then, Cyclone Fanatic has a couple. Des Moines Register has theirs. Cyclone fans can listen to a new podcast every single day if they want to. But there's no YouTube content really, as far as anything centered around Iowa State, or Iowa State or directed towards Iowa State fans. So we're really excited to kind of be the first ones to kind of break into that type of media.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, we do kind of have one. We've got the late kick with Josh Pate, the Cyclone homer who's never even been to the state of Iowa before.
I'll be honest, I haven't heard of him. I'm not trying to discredit him. I haven't not heard of him myself, I guess.
Oh, okay. He's one of the 247 guys.
Oh, okay.
It's quality YouTube content.
Good.
And
the second one's to break into YouTube
then. Well, technically he runs it's pretty SEC swung on his, but whenever he gets the chance, he will bring up Iowa State. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
So you follow the recruiting trails.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have to. Yeah, for the site, we have to kind of know what's going on, who's coming in, and who we're gonna have to be covering, and who to kind of keep our eye on. Because if we can keep our eye on recruits and stuff like that, then we can kind of get out ahead of telling people about them. So,
did you see what happened with Xavier Nwankpa, Southeast Polk kid, 4-star defensive back? I want to say he's a safety.
Something recently.
He went from being a 3 race. He went from being in a 3 school race with us, Ohio State, and I don't like to say the other team. And
yeah,
now he's that team out east. I have unkind words to say about them, but we have to avoid slander on this program.
Yeah,
but he turned cool on us, and now he's all in the SEC, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. His recruiting went national.
Offers and everything. Yep.
Yeah, his recruiting went national. Yep. I don't know if you had any fun information.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not surprising. He's. I mean, I don't personally talk to him or anything like that, so I don't necessarily have an inside scoop on Xavier or where he's at with his decision. But it's not surprising that his recruitment went fully national. I mean, he's an excellent player. Anybody that's watched him or any of his highlights from Southeast Polk, you can see he's a really outstanding player. And Iowa State would love to have him, and he'd probably be very, very early, if not day one, very close to that as a starter. at corner, especially because right now they're kind of looking for that second corner to step up. So that's more of a this season thing, but next season they're still gonna need that guy. And there's some good guys. There's some good young guys on the roster right now. But a guy like Xavier Nwankpa, I mean, that's a full blue chip elite recruit type thing from the home state. He can do lots of different things. He can play corner. He can be your return guy. He can do all sorts of different things. And so it doesn't shock me at all that Ohio State and Alabama and pretty much anybody that matters has gotten in on his recruitment. Doesn't shock me at all, and that makes it harder for Iowa State. I mean, obviously they're trying to recruit. They're trying to recruit Iowa as well as they can, and they're making up a lot of ground with in-state guys, especially competing against Iowa. They're making up a lot of ground. But in the end, if there's a guy that is in-state that is really, really, really good blue chip guy, you're not just competing against Iowa at that point. You're competing against Ohio State. You're competing against Oklahoma has come up here for some guys. Alabama has come up. They got Ross
TCU.
Piersbacher out of at TCU. They got Ross Piersbacher was in Cedar Falls, and Alabama came and got him. I think he just graduated from Alabama either last year or 2 years ago. But
Texas
he was up
Christian
there. I
got
mean,
the. Oh, sorry.
TCU
Texas
got
Christian got Max Duggan. Yeah,
Max
that's who I was
Duggan.
thinking
Yeah,
of.
Max Duggan. Then there's been a few other guys that have made their way um, out of state, both in football and basketball. And they're
Yeah, I
trying to
mean,
do their best to keep the blue chippers here because Iowa does not produce very many blue chippers. So you'd like, Iowa State as an in-state school to get after those and to secure the ones that they can. I think they're making up ground, but I mean, Xavier Nwankpa is not just a blue chipper. I mean, he's a prize for anybody. He is
yeah,
probably one of Alabama's high priorities for that class. Even Alabama, I'm sure he's probably a high priority for Alabama and Ohio State too. I mean, he's not just a blue chipper like Alan Lazard, where he's gonna get some national attention from Notre Dame, Stanford, and stuff like that. But he's probably gonna be somewhere in the Midwest or something like that, more of a regional blue chip, if you want to call it that. Whereas Xavier Nwankpa is full on national blue chip prize recruit for everybody type of player.
oh,
He's
absolutely. I mean, it's
he's
weird
not
that you mentioned.
technically a 4-star, but he's not technically a 5-star, but he's very, very, very close to that.
Yeah, he's knocking on the door. But if you notice the 22 and 23, I go off the 247 composite recruiting, but the 22 and 23
Yep.
classes in the state of Iowa are just loaded. Like that defensive tackle Hunter Deo,
Yeah,
I
there
want
are
to say
there
he's a
are
23.
yeah, there's a bunch of good young players that I don't know. Well, I don't know how many blue chippers will come out of that or not. Well, I'm gonna pull up that list right now.
I'm just going off the top of my head. I should pull up my list too.
Yeah, I'm not quite that intimately familiar. Yeah, Hunter Deo is he's a 4-star. You got Xavier Aaron Graves already committed to Iowa. Jacob Iming or Iming, I'm not sure
Yeah,
if
we got
how you
him.
pronounce his.
That
We
was a
got
nice
Iowa.
win.
He's an Iowa State commit. He was a nice snag for your first commit of the class. You're probably very, very happy with that. Eli um, Raridan, he's a tight end out of Des Moines, and I think he's probably going to end up in Notre Dame. Not sure. Will
That's the
McLaughlin is
crystal ball.
is a, isn't Will McLaughlin's an interesting one in that class too for in-state, um, because he tweeted out a graphic the other day, one from Iowa. There was a bracket, and they had a bunch of schools crossed off with Iowa ending up as the championship winner or whatever. And a lot of people thought that was him committing to Iowa because it looked like a bracket. And he had like Iowa State was crossed out and Kansas was crossed out. Like it was clear. But then like 2 days later or a day later, he posted a graphic of him from Iowa State or whatever. So it's like everyone's like, okay, so that wasn't a commitment. Because yeah, right now, Will McLaughlin's got a couple. He's got a couple crystal balls for Iowa State. And he's got one for Iowa. Um,
Yeah, just last year
so,
he was all in on Iowa. Crystal Balls said yes, and then the commitment of
mhm,
Jacob Imming and him knowing Will McLaughlin and them basically self-recruiting, if you
right,
will. And now
right.
they're looking like McLaughlin
It, it,
might go
they
Iowa
might get him.
State. Yeah.
He'd be a nice pickup too. That's like him and Iming are both guys that um they're high 3-stars only because they're in Iowa and they're not in Ohio or Pennsylvania or something like that. These guys would probably be borderline 4-star players in a more visible area probably. And if if someone like if some more prestigious program like a Notre Dame or Oklahoma or someone that came knocking and offered them, they probably would jump up to a 4-star. Much partially because it's an annoyance of mine with 247 is that ratings bump up based on offers, and I find
Yeah.
that very annoying.
That is
If
a little
Alabama
annoying.
if Alabama offers somebody, it doesn't matter where they were, they're immediately a 4-star. Doesn't matter who it
Well,
was.
you're also forgetting the star drop if you take an offer that they weren't expecting. So like if you take the offer to Michigan State instead of Michigan, that used to happen all the
Right.
time.
And you drop. Yep.
You
And you
drop a
drop.
star.
And
Yeah, it's
that's why the blue chip ratio they always talk about it's partially fabricated because they
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that Alabama only gets blue chippers and that's why they win. Well, Alabama can't not have a blue chipper because they become a blue chipper by having an Alabama offer. So Alabama just can't not get blue chippers. So
It's
I don't
ridiculous.
know. I can't stand it. It's really annoying. I mean, I know that they do their best, but the idea that someone is jumps in ranking because they got a different offer, I know, to me is a concession from 247 or whoever it is. It's a concession from them that they don't really actually believe that much in their own scouting.
So
Like,
that's usually the 247 composite. So
sure,
a lot of schools actually just write a hit piece about the dude who just took the alternate offer, and then it counts towards their composite. He's like, well, he wasn't actually good enough to play for Alabama. He wasn't actually good enough to play for the Ohio State. He was like, so these hit
right,
pieces get factored into the composite. If you actually click on the recruit, you'll rarely see them go down if they take an offer. The composite's just kind of skewed that way.
yeah,
I
it
don't
drives me
particularly like
nuts.
that.
I don't know. It
Oh yeah.
drives me nuts. But Matt Campbell's made his hay so far on finding those mid to high 3-star guys and turning them into 4.5-star players once they hit the field. So I mean, he's made his hay doing that, and that's fine with me. I mean, you'd like to see Iowa State start landing more blue chippers, and I think that's a realistic possibility going forward. It's a little bit late on the 2022 class because a lot of them were already offered the relationships before the Fiesta Bowl win. 23, you can basically you can start a lot of your relationships. You can start a lot of your relationships with Fiesta Bowl already in place. So that way you can, that's, to me, 23 is kind of where you would really start to see the bump. You might see it in 22 a little bit, but I think 23 is where you'll start to see the Fiesta Bowl bump, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it before, but Pennsylvania, Matt Campbell started really recruiting Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
it all sort of comes back to Isheem Young.
Hashim
Yeah,
Young, and now
that's
and then his buddy Duquan Amos came from Villanova,
yep.
and
And now we're looking
they're
at
both from
potentially
Philly.
potentially getting Tyke Smith from WVU. I mean,
That'd be huge to be able to play essentially because you could get him and plug him in for Lawrence White and
it's
right
like you're
there.
not even missing a beat there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be
And now there's
perfect fit.
now there's a 4-star defensive end out of Emotep, same school as Isheem Young, real good
Yep,
friends with Isheem Young,
yep,
and things are kind of lining up to where he might just come to Iowa State over Penn State.
yeah. I mean, and that'd be such a huge recruiting coup to go in there and steal a 4-star defensive end out of Pennsylvania from Penn State. I mean, that's huge for
That's
Iowa
like
State
winning
to
the
go start.
lottery.
Oh man, I mean, well, winning the lottery is going into Central Ohio and stealing Mike Rose. That's winning the lottery. This
Going
guy,
into
this
Ohio
is
and stealing Joe Skates.
or that, yeah. Well, Joe Skates is a little bit different because he actually did have an Ohio State offer, but they kind of, I think, from what I understand, they kind of backed off him a little bit because he had some off the field stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
So he ended up with us, which is good. I really hope this coming season, I think, is an opportunity if he can get it together, he can really break out and be the player that we all thought that we know he can be. So he's an interesting player to watch for this fall too. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that later in the interview. Um,
Actually,
but
surprisingly, not that much on Joe Skates. I mean, I know all 4 of our composite 4-stars, but I always get a little worried making predictions. Last year, I made a bold prediction, ice cold take. Joe Skates was going to be the number 1 receiver. He was going to be the guy. He was going to be it. Ice cold take.
yeah, should have talked to me ahead of time, man. I could have told you Xavier was going to be the truth.
Well, I wasn't on the radio, so I'm just coming clean now.
That's fair. That's fair.
I knew that I was just saying that because 4-star receiver. We don't get a lot of those. Same body type
Yeah.
as Hakeem Butler. He's going to be the guy. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was
Well,
ice cold.
yeah. So before last season, I did a scouting report on Xavier Hutchinson, and I did a big film review of him and made a player comparison. I compared him to Justin Blackman when he was at Oklahoma State, play style wise, and turned out to be darn near
Spot
dead
on.
on. spot on.
I don't think you could get a better comp than Justin Blackman.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect, and he lived up to every bit of that, and he's probably going to be better this year. I mean, you need that second guy to stop. I think Tariq Milton is probably your second guy right now, because we know he can, when he's healthy, he can be a game changer when he's healthy.
Dangerous.
And I think he's dangerous, man. He's made for that slot spot. You stick him right in there. His short stride length, which always it's always weird to watch on tape because I always think like, man, that dude's gonna tear a quad sometime. It's gonna be bad because it's his stride length is so short.
Yeah.
But part of that allows him to be really tight in space, and to be in that slot and make really tight cuts. He can be really dangerous there too. I think Tariq Milton in the slot should scare some people if he stays healthy.
Well, that was kind of what we were missing last year, was that stretch the field ability. And I mean, we had it to a certain extent, but how much can you actually rely on stretching the fields when your tight ends are your primary receivers?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was Xavier, Charlie. It was Xavier, Charlie, and then a drop off, and then like Chase Allen, and then like a big drop off to everybody else.
And then Kene Nwangu somewhere in there catching passes out of the backfield and just burning dudes.
I don't know. Did Kene actually catch a pass out of the backfield last year? It was maybe a couple if he did. I don't actually remember him.
It was a couple, but he took them pretty far. It might have been a backward pass, so it might not have counted as a pass. Might have counted as a lateral.
Oh, like a screen pass or something like that.
Yeah, but when he got those,
or not a screen, but like something out to the flats. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, now that I think about it, yeah. When I think of Kene and him catching the ball, my mind goes back to that West Virginia game a couple years ago when he had two of them drop and both of them went into interceptions. I don't know. That's not a fair That's not a fair like a total like that's not a fair summation of his catching abilities. That's just where my mind goes.
Yeah, no, I get you on that. I get that feeling every time I watch the Lions. I just expect a loss because I saw it.
Yeah,
I saw it too many times, and it scars you.
He did have 3 catches last year. He had 3 catches last year for 22 yards. Okay.
All right. So maybe not exactly what I was thinking, but close enough.
Yeah, no, I get you.
So how did you become a Iowa State football fan?
I was born into it. My whole family went to Iowa State. I came out of the hospital with an Iowa State onesie on. I mean, it's pretty much it's in my DNA. Everybody, all of my dad went there. A bunch of my uncles went there. I think, I don't know, we're up to about a dozen cousins that have gone there. I mean, I went there. My sister went there. We're an Iowa State family through and through.
You're out in that East Iowa, West Illinois area where everything is terrible and looks like stolen Steeler colors.
Yeah, it's a trial by fire. It's a trial by fire when you come up as a Cyclone fan in hot country. And when I was coming up was the early 2000s and stuff like that, when we were really bad at both basketball and football.
Wasn't that the end of the Dan McCarney era?
Yeah, but the end of the Dan McCarney era was 2 wins.
That's a good point. But I mean, we were still bad after that. Iowa. I don't know how Dan McCarney always did that.
Got to rub that in their face, but then you beat Iowa, but then they go to the Orange Bowl and you have to hear about that, and it's
Now they go to the San Diego Credit Union Bowl every year.
Yeah.
Talking about rivalries, because that Iowa State Cyhawk game is a huge rivalry. What's your favorite rivalry from all of the Iowa State rivalries?
I mean, well, I would say, we really only have like 2. I mean, 2 official rivalries. I mean, kind of a 2.5 if you want to count Kansas State. I mean, we have Iowa and Missouri, the only 2 of the 2 trophy games that we've played for. I think one, you do count K-State. I don't like K-State.
Farmageddon.
I mean, I like the rivalry. I can't stand. Like, I like Farm. I can't stand Iowa. I will never cheer for them in anything. It does not matter who they're playing. I will not cheer for Iowa. Period.
So that's your favorite rivalry?
You can name any team in the world. What was that?
So that was your favorite rivalry then?
Well, I don't know if I'd say favorite. I mean, I enjoy that rivalry because I like beating Iowa when we can. The last couple of years hasn't been ideal, obviously, but I think a rivalry. To me, we've been forming this, and partially is because we've been playing them in stuff for so long. But with Oklahoma State, there's a budding rivalry with Oklahoma State that I think people need to acknowledge. And I think in that rivalry, if you want to call it that, is a lot more fun than the K State one. And it's a
Yeah.
legitimately fun rivalry. I mean, look at the basketball games that we've had over the years. The football game has been close has been close almost every year. I mean, it has been close
2011.
every year under Matt Campbell. Yeah, 2011. You know, there's an upset to go back to. There's close games. There's exciting moments like the Naz 3-pointers and stuff. I mean, there's lots of good moments to go back to. There's and soon I think wrestling will become more of a rivalry. It was for a long time, and then now wrestling will go back to kind of being a um, more heated rivalry now that we're competitive again. Um, and I think I if I was gonna like just pick a rivalry, maybe not one that's officially crowned. I like our quote unquote rivalry with Oklahoma State. I think we have a lot of fun games with them. Oklahoma State's full of good people. It's a very similar school to Iowa State, kind of an ag school out in the middle of nowhere. Stillwater's even smaller than Ames, if I remember correctly. Um, so I mean,
Stillwater is
Oklahoma
smaller
State,
than Ames. It's really nice though. Really nice.
yeah,
All right, so I like that. Here's the one I would present to you: Baylor. That's
nah.
a rivalry. That's not a rivalry, but
I
if
mean,
it turns into fistfights on the field, the basketball team is actually pretty good.
well, that's because Baylor fist fights a lot of people though.
Well, yeah, but I mean
And
the Matt
basketball has
Bowl
been extraordinarily,
lopsided.
yeah. I mean,
Women's basketball not so
Baylor,
much.
yeah, basketball has been. I mean, Baylor basketball play. I would say Baylor in basketball has been non-competitive for a long time. I mean, Baylor Scott Drew beats us when he feels like it. Like they show up and they beat us by 20. That's just kind of what happened. It even happened to Prom. You know, it happened to Prom. It happened to Hoiberg where he lost a few big games to Baylor too. And he beat Baylor a couple times, but the basketball games have largely been non-competitive. Um, Football games have been heated, but I don't know if I would I don't know if I would consider it a rival though. I mean, they're heated in the way that conference games get heated, and Baylor's kind of has a reputation
Kind
for
of like
that.
the Matt Bowl when it was Matt Rule, Matt Campbell, two young up and comers,
Yeah,
and they both recruited the same type of guys from the same areas, so all these dudes knew each other. That was kind of very rivalry feel to me. Now it's
sure.
Dave Aranda, and I don't know what he's going to be, but when Charlie
Yeah,
Brewer
he doesn't have
walks
much
away
of a
from your
personality.
program,
He doesn't have much of a personality from what I can tell. So it's not like he's kind of like Matt Campbell in that there's not a lot of personality there as far as like fire. Like, well, actually, I'm not gonna say that because I think
I
Matt
was going
Campbell
to
does show
say,
some on-field fire.
yeah,
Matt Campbell shows some on-field fire, and he's really easy to listen to. I'm not. But he's pretty quiet. He's kind of like Chris Kleiman, where he's not gonna give you a lot of great quotes necessarily. He's just gonna kind of show up and do his job, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that kind of coach, but um, it's not super interesting, I guess. Or like Lon Kruger with Oklahoma, like he's really good at his job, isn't particularly animated on the sideline or anything like that. Just does his job.
not a great soundbite.
Not a great soundbite or whatever. So I don't know. I think I think whatever there is of an Iowa State Baylor rivalry, I think is mostly manufactured on social media. I think it's the fans chirping back and forth. But as far as like the actual programs, I don't think we like to beat Baylor. But I don't think we treat it like a rivalry necessarily. Like we have bad blood with Kansas State. We have some bad blood with Oklahoma State. We've got bad blood with Iowa. Like the guys really like to beat those teams. Um, and I think those wins me a little bit more than like a Baylor does.
Well, yeah, and Mike Gundy just seems to have Matt Campbell's number.
He does. He absolutely has Matt Campbell's number.
I mean, he was able to just really own this rivalry over the last 5 years. He's what, 4 out of 5?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's funny because the record says that they own it, but the games have all been super close. Like, I mean, they're like it's just razor thin margins, but they just keep going to Oklahoma State. And the one time that Matt Campbell has beat him was with
Surprise,
freshman
Brock
Brock
Purdy.
Purdy that Oklahoma State had no tape on or anything like that. So, it's I mean that win wasn't a fluke, but it was an odd situation that gave Iowa State a significant advantage, having a freshman with no tape that can come in and handle a game like that. That's a dramatic advantage. And since then, when they've gotten tape on Brock Purdy, Brock has struggled against Oklahoma State because they've got his number. They rattle him, they force him into turnovers, all sorts of stuff. And um, hopefully this year is the year where they can get over that Oklahoma State hump. Because if they had done that last year, you know,
yeah,
they had a real shot at getting to the playoff.
I always hate to say who Oklahoma State's losing because it seems like whoever I mention, there's always somebody better behind him. Like I was like, oh, they're losing Mason Rudolph. Oh, here comes.
They're pretty good
Cornelius.
at reloading, generally speaking.
Yeah, but they're losing.
They're generally
Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, they're losing. Well, they lost Chuba. They're losing Tylan Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Oklahoma State, how they do next year entirely depends on how you think they do next year. Almost entirely depends on if you're a Spencer Sanders believer or not. Personally, I'm not. I'm not high on Spencer Sanders. I think he's a good runner, but as far as a passer, though, I think he's pretty limited, and I think he's extremely turnover prone. I think his ceiling isn't super high as a passer. I don't think. I just don't see it. And so I see Oklahoma State taking a step back. That's not necessarily say they are guaranteed to do that, but when you lose the second best running back your school's ever had, and one of the best receivers, who else are you putting ahead of him besides Barry?
Thurman Thomas. He was ahead of Barry.
Maybe yardage wise, but maybe like total yardage wise. But did Thurman Thomas have a 2,000-yard season? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I don't know. He started ahead of Barry though. That's all I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Chuba ahead of Thurman.
Okay.
Thurman maybe has a better pro career than Chuba does, because Thurman had a good pro career. But maybe, and I don't know if Chuba will or not. But I'm gonna put Chuba ahead, but that's probably right on the board there. Chuba's got a pretty significant legacy.
Well, that LD Brown cat that they pulled out for the last few games.
Yeah, LD Brown's pretty solid. Yeah.
And then the young buck behind him.
I think they'll take a step back.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent.
I think they'll take a step back. Well, I mean, because what were they? How many games did they win last year?
Conference games. They lost 3. No, 2. They lost 2. They lost to Oklahoma and Texas.
Okay, so they lost 2. So they were 7-2 in conference. I think they're probably more like a 5-4 in conference. I think they'll probably lose Oklahoma. I think we'll beat them. I think they'll probably lose to Texas and TCU potentially. They're probably a 6-3 or 5-4 in conference team, in my opinion.
That's fair. I mean, you do lose Eamon Ogbogbemega, who I've been dying to say his name on air to prove I can say it correctly.
Actually, Ogbongbemiga.
I can't even get that right. I've been practicing.
I got quizzed on that on an Oklahoma State podcast, so that's why I know that.
Oh, okay. Who was it?
10-12 with Philip Slavin.
Okay, yeah. Those Oklahoma State fans, they're pleasant when you're not playing them. They're really nice people. Stillwater's lovely.
They're still fun to smack talk back and forth with when you are playing them, though.
Yeah, but like once it's game week, they just flip a switch and they're in smack talk mode. Let's have a fight. Let's throw down. I love Oklahoma State. Actually,
you know what's funny though, is that honestly, probably the overall, in my opinion, there's 3 or 4 really awesome fan bases, and then there's another tier, and then there's a bottom tier. Like up at the top, you've got Oklahoma State, West Virginia. I think it's really good fans. I've always gotten along. TCU has always been one of my favorites. I really like talking to TCU people. They're all really good people. And actually, funny enough, Oklahoma fans have always been really good. I've met very, very few bad Oklahoma fans. And
they're pretty good.
Interestingly enough, part of it too, because I think they respect what Iowa State's doing. So they don't see us as their equal necessarily, but they see us as a very real threat and a bigger one than Texas.
Yeah, when I was covering the Oklahoma Iowa State softball series, talking to some of those Oklahoma guys in the press box, and they're so excited that we're good at football. It was really weird that somebody was excited that wasn't an Iowa State fan. It was, to your point,
Oklahoma,
very
man. There's a bunch of good people over there for Oklahoma. I've always enjoyed my interactions with Oklahoma fans.
Well, when you brought up the West Virginia, I just reminded myself, I'm surprised you didn't choose that for a rivalry. The old Riot Bowl.
That's a good one. I kind of didn't think about that one.
No, it doesn't count too
West
much.
Virginia might be one of my favorites. Um, I'm still gonna stick with Oklahoma State, partially because it's been around longer. The games have been closer. I mean, generally speaking, funny enough, like though, like we play each other, we have fun playing each other, but the games aren't actually typically like super close. I mean, Paul Rowe, that the one that Grant Rohawk won in overtime randomly in Morgantown was close, but like, a couple years, when they first got to the Big 12, they kicked the crap out of us for a few years, and then the last couple years we've put a good hurting on them. So
Yeah.
it's not as competitive as you think it is. Usually one or the other tends to beat the other one pretty significantly. It's fun. Like the two fan bases are really similar culture wise, but I don't know. The games are not like I'm giving Oklahoma State the edge because the actual games themselves are more competitive and they're more fun for me than with West Virginia.
The Oklahoma State one makes me need to take like my chill down pill because it's just usually a little too tight for comfort. It's like those jeans you keep in the back of your closet and you're like, oh, this will be great. No, too tight, too tight.
No, too tight, too tight. Yeah,
Sometimes they don't button up and you just lose the jeans.
yeah, and then your butt's really tight in them. And it's like it's weird. This
Yeah, you
feels
can't even
weird.
sit down correctly. Like
Right? Yeah.
stranglers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley's blocking in-state transfers. What do you think about that?
I can see, I can see both sides of this. I can empathize with both arguments here. I can understand the player side of it, say they should be able to do what they want, go to a different school if they want to. I get that. 100% get that. And generally and typically lean on that side. Typically am in favor of giving the player more freedom to do what they want as opposed to less. Um, but I also understand where Lincoln Riley's coming from, saying that if you start allowing every single in conference transfer to just change immediately whenever they want, that can really upset the balance of power, or not balance. I shouldn't say the balance of power, but well, kind of. It can create some really really difficult situations. And like, what if um, out of nowhere, I don't know, LD Brown after this season says, "I want to go play at Oklahoma," and just does and can just do so just like that. Then all of a sudden Oklahoma's got another guy. It's kind of like the NBA when people hated that Kevin Durant went to the Warriors. The same thing could happen.
Right.
Absolutely the same thing. Or Xavier Hutchinson just decides to up and transfer to Oklahoma. I mean, you want to let them do what they want, but if all the players in the conference decide, well, we're just going to go pile on one team and we're going to go to Oklahoma because we'll be able to run through the conference no problem, and we can supercharge Oklahoma and get them to a title. If you allow totally free transfer within the conference, without any sort of sit out year or anything like that, I understand the argument with the balance of power, because then you don't, and you could legitimately end up with a situation like we had the NBA, where I mean some people really liked that Warriors team and stuff like that, like just because they were so good. But there was a lot of people that really hated the fact that Kevin Durant bailed on the Thunder and went to the Warriors. It's exactly the same situation as if Xavier Hutchinson said, screw it, I lost Oklahoma, I don't want to do that again, I'm going to go to Oklahoma. Now remember, Xavier had an Oklahoma offer. Oklahoma went after him and they wanted him bad. And if Xavier Hutchinson tomorrow said, I want to go to Oklahoma, they'd take him. I mean, you're taking, if not the best, then the second best receiver in the conference. But who has the best, or second best? Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
You'd be taking the other best receiver in the conference and putting them on the same team or whatever, and you would just allow free transfer, so that if Xavier Hutchinson does that, maybe I don't know, someone from West Virginia wants to do that. Maybe Deuce from Deuce, what's his
Deuce
name,
Vaughn.
from Kansas State. Yeah, Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State. Maybe he decides he wants to go play for Oklahoma, and all of a sudden now they can run six back. They've got a bunch of this, whatever. Maybe after this season, Spencer Rattler goes to the NFL, and Brock Purdy decides he wants to transfer to Oklahoma.
That would be disgusting, and I would cry for days.
You've got, I mean, so, but now all of a sudden you got a mess on your hands, because all of the conference's talent are now all of a sudden piling into Oklahoma, even though, yeah, I mean, so I totally get it from both sides. If I had to pick a side, I'd probably lean like 50.1% towards Lincoln Riley on this one, because I think the maintaining some sort of sense of competitive balance within the conference is extremely important. Because remember, if you lose that competitive balance, then you lose marketability, and it just becomes the Oklahoma show from now on. Then Oklahoma can do whatever they want. Maybe they decide, well, I don't want to do this. We're owning this conference. We do everything. Let's just go to the SEC, make more money, and we can do that anyways. Well, then all of a sudden the Big 12 is less valuable, and then all of a sudden people drop down. They start dropping sports, and so there's a lot of dominoes that go with this. That if the Big 12 is not competitive, is not at least somewhat competitively balanced, it becomes less valuable. You lose money, you lose scholarships, you lose opportunities for student athletes. It affects a lot more people down the road. I know it's easy to say we should let players do what they want, no matter what, anytime, anywhere, any place. And I get that, but I think that's it. I think, in my opinion, just my opinion, like I said, that I think that is a sided conclusion. I think, because it affects a lot of other people besides just that one. So, and like I said, if someone today came, someone tomorrow came to me and really presented a convincing argument in favor of letting them transfer anytime, anywhere, I could probably be swayed. Honestly, I think I'm very, very on the fence about this. It's not an Iowa State situation, so I don't have to like really think about it too much. I mean, you think about it because it's an interesting situation, but it's not directly affecting Iowa State at this point in time. So I there's arguments that could sway me either way.
Yeah, no, it's kind of weird how all the guys that Coach Campbell recruits tend to stay here for a very long time, if not the full
They don't
4
want to
years.
leave.
Pretty close. Yeah, no, that's very uncommon in college football, and you almost kind of wonder if maybe that's why he recruits these guys who are maybe under recruited.
I'm sure that's probably it's hard to say because football, it's not like basketball where we don't have one and done. So part of basketball recruiting is this kid going to leave after 1 year or whatever, and then I have to totally overhaul my roster every year, which is one of the many quagmires that Steve Frome found himself within, is that he had to overhaul his roster every year. In football, if you get a guy, you have in your building for a minimum of 3 years, so you're guaranteed some time with everybody. And do you plan down the road in case you only get 3 seasons out of them instead of 4? Maybe, but you're basically replacing most positions. Like, you're recruiting for most positions every year anyways. So I don't know if you do so much of. Yeah, yeah. And so I don't know if you plan it the same way, saying, well, he might go pro. I mean, you probably do it maybe at a Clemson or an Alabama, where your whole starting lineup is going to be replaced every 3 years, basically, because everybody's going to go pro early, basically. So maybe then you take a little bit more of consideration for that. But for Iowa State, when people leave early so little, so infrequently, I don't know if that's too much of a concern. Plus, I think the guys that are under recruited, I think Matt Campbell sees in them an extra drive to succeed, or a kind of a chip on their shoulder, and a desire to learn, is where a lot of those guys end up, as the mid high 3-star guys that get under recruited a little bit, because maybe they're not just a world class athlete, but they are really hard worker. They're very skilled. They're really smart. They're good leaders, something like that. Or in the case of a Kanani Wangu, where he is a world class athlete and he's a great leader, he's a great person, and he just needs to be put in the right situation.
Yeah,
it could be it's a lot of those kind of guys.
Talking about the right situation in the right places, there's something that the Broyles Award finalist people did that I will never understand. They chose Tom Manning over John Heacock. How do you rationalize that? Like, the offense was fine or whatever, and Breece Hall was really humming on the run, but John Heacock shut out Kansas State, held West Virginia to 6 points, shut out Oklahoma for the second half, shut out Oregon for the second half. How can you look at that and just not go, wow, that's amazing?
Yeah, I don't know. I know we were confused about that when that came out. That's not to say that Tom Manning isn't good at his job, or he can't, isn't deserving of some recognition anyways. But John Hancock has, I mean, there are very you can count the number of defensive coordinators in this country that are better than him on one hand, um,
Right.
and maybe not the whole hand, you know.
About three
Um,
fingers, I think.
yeah, maybe a couple fingers. Yeah, that's about it. Um, so the assistant awards are tough because it's not necessarily
Most
the
deserving.
best. It's not necessarily the most deserving or just the best. Otherwise, Brent Venables from Clemson would probably win it every year, or something like that. I think they look to see year over year improvement. They look to see things like that. And when you look at like Iowa State's offense and how what kind of rhythm they were in, Brees Hall be having the year he did, the offensive line playing well, the tight ends doing something that not a lot of places do. That's probably why Tom Manning got put there. As opposed, because if you remember a few years ago, Tyson Veit, I think he won the Broyles Award when he coached up Joel Lanning. If I
That's
remember, or
right.
he was
To an
either
All
he was either a
American. He
finalist
was
or
a finalist.
he won it. It was one of the two. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was right there at the end, partially because of what he did with Joel Lanning and making him an All American middle linebacker. Um, does that mean that Tyson Veit is the best middle linebacker, best linebackers coach in America? Not necessarily. But it did mean
What he
that he
did
did the
that
best
year was
job
the most
that
impressive.
that year. What he did that year was the most impressive. And last year, John Haycock was a victim of his own expectations. Maybe it was a victim of his own success. Where he was so good, he always is so good and so consistent that him being really good is the expectation. Whereas Tom Manning came in, he ran an offense where a lot of times you're running three tight ends. He had a 1,500-yard rusher, or whatever. Brees Hall ended up with 1,300 yards or whatever it was. Um, really good, whatever
Yeah.
yardage total was. He was, the leading rusher in the country.
I'd have to look it
Um,
up.
you know, yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was. But having Brees Hall, having Brock Purdy, having those three tight ends, but then also having Xavier Hutchinson at, the first team All Big 12 receiver. When you have that kind of offensive success at Iowa State, you're probably gonna get some recognition or whatever. And Tom Manning I think was deserving of recognition for sure with what he did with the offense, um, especially later in the year. But so yeah, you know, the yearly awards are tricky because they're not really a recognition of the best period. It's just who's done the most impressive job that season, basically. Just like the
Right.
MVP award in the NBA, where it's who's been good that season.
Oh yeah, I've never been a huge fan of those year end awards when it just turns into one of those how can this happen sort of things. But I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that it wasn't John Haycock
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Oklahoma
no,
just went
yeah,
and
I
put a
get that.
hurt on everybody.
Yeah, yep. No, I get that.
How many Big 12 stadiums have you actually traveled to?
Not as many as you think. I've been to Iowa State and I've been to TCU.
Mm,
Actually, that might be it. I think I've
that's
only done
it.
those two. Yeah, yep. My plan this year is to get around to more. I'm probably gonna go to the Oklahoma State game. Or wait, no,
That's
wait.
gonna be here. It was
It
in
is here.
Stillwater
Okay,
last
so
year.
Oklahoma. I'm gonna be at the Oklahoma game for sure.
Palace on the Prairie.
I will. Yeah. I'll be at the Oklahoma game for sure. I'm probably gonna try to go to Kansas State, and I'm probably gonna go to West Virginia. I think Oklahoma and West Virginia are the ones that right now that I'm thinking I'm definitely gonna try to get to. Kansas State, we'll see.
I'm surprised you're
But
not going
then,
to UNLV.
well, I'm going to you. Wow, that's not a Big 12
That's
game,
not a
so that's why I
conference
guess I'm
game.
going.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna be at in Las Vegas. A lot of Wide Right people are gonna be in Las Vegas. We'll be having an event out there for that. So, and we're kind of in the early stages of organizing that and figuring out what we're doing with that.
Right. Well, I've got some advice. So I used to live in Texas. I was stationed out of Fort Hood, and then I lived in Austin for a while. I've been to Texas, TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I will say the nicest one to sit in is actually probably McLean Stadium for Baylor. Like it's blocks the sun perfectly. It's a very pretty stadium. It's easy to get
Amon
around.
Carter Stadium, TCU is a really nice stadium. That's a really really nice stadium.
I liked it, but don't. Austin's fine. I would recommend going there. The cool thing about going to Texas games is they sell beer in the stadium.
Yeah,
Same with Oklahoma. Palace on the Prairie is kind of weird though. Not a huge fan of the layout. I had some nosebleed seats, so it wasn't great. But
yeah.
definitely
No, I get that.
second best is going to be Stillwater, Oklahoma State.
TCU is a cool stadium. I think that if that stadium is full and loud, it'd probably be a lot of fun. But I don't know. TCU fans, TCU sometimes has some problems with their atmosphere a little bit. I'm trying. I don't want to rack on TCU too much because I have some really good friends like that are from TCU that write for the TCU site and stuff like that. So I apologize, Melissa, if you're listening to this. And Jamie.
It's not their fault. They're a
But
smaller private college.
yeah,
That's how it is.
it's a smaller private school. That's pretty much what it is.
I mean, you kind of have to love it to go there. It's the same thing with Baylor. Like, people from Waco aren't getting amped for Baylor games unless you went to Baylor.
Yeah, nah. Yeah.
They're going to go to A&M or they're going to go to Texas for the weekend. They're not going to go to the Baylor game.
Yeah, well, and TCU's in a big metro too, and not get super excited about college sports. That's why, like, when Western, let's not know. Nobody in Chicago cares about Northwestern. Just the same way that nobody in New York cares about Rutgers.
Yeah, that was one of those weird things that I never understood from the Big Ten. Why would you bring in Rutgers? Bring in Syracuse. They're better at basketball. At least there's that.
They wanted the New York City market. I guess.
Nobody cares about Rutgers, the State College of New Jersey.
Nobody
the Warriors
cares.
of the Raritan. I know all their stupid little nicknames. Like it's great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of Michigan sports talk radio, and they always come up with the goofiest nickname for every Big Ten school. And the Warriors of the Raritan is the one that always comes up for Rutgers.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. If I'm in the Big 12, I'm in the Big 10, it would be difficult for me to get up for playing Rutgers. Like, it's just nobody would care about.
We'll see if Greg Schiano can do it this year. I mean, I'm rooting for Rutgers. I always love an underdog story. I want them to beat Ohio State every year.
That's fair.
Because, I feel like that makes them want to root for Iowa State. It works like that, except for Indiana. For some reason, we turned heel on all the Indiana fans.
Well, that's because the Indiana fans got real salty with us when we ended up ahead of them in the college football playoff rankings. Right. And so we would have been their friends, but they got bitter, and it wasn't good. We're happy to cheer for the underdogs, but unless they get sassy with us, like Coastal Carolina, I wanted them to get hammered by 100. As soon as they started getting sassy online, saying like, "Oh, Iowa State doesn't deserve to be there," blah, blah, blah. Or it's like, well, one, if we played you on a field right now, we'd beat you by 2 touchdowns at least. But two, I mean, it made it impossible for me to cheer for Coastal Carolina. I couldn't do it.
No, I want the Sun Belt to lose every game they play now. Unfortunately, that's not possible with conference games. I hope that Kansas just kicks the crap out of Coastal Carolina next year. I know it won't happen, but they should.
That ain't gonna happen. No. Coastal Carolina will beat them by a few touchdowns.
Kansas
is gonna be really bad next year.
I mean, bad. I'm not saying Les Miles is a great head coach, but he was a head coach, and now you got nothing, Kansas. They've got like an
interim in there.
Yeah, I was surprised that they didn't call up.
The weird thing
David
is there's just not a lot of. There's no path forward for Kansas. Like there's no path where you're like, oh, this is how they get back to where they were. There is no path for Kansas right now to get back to where they were. They don't even have a full roster of scholarship players. How you expect to win games when you don't even have a full roster of scholarships? Like, I mean, what's the game plan?
I guess the game plan is to lose or start dropping bags of money, start pulling a Tennessee extra Happy Meal.
Yeah, it's something like that. I don't know. And they lost their coordinator, Brent Dearman. I mean, he's an up and coming name in the coaching rankings for sure. And he bolted before they even
fired Les Miles.
And I don't think they even talked to him after they fired Les Miles. And if he'd have been there when Les Miles got fired, he'd have been a natural one to just slide right in there. But now he's gone.
Yeah, so, I mean, I always thought that Les Miles was just doing like a 3-year build the roster thing. I'm Les Miles, hand the keys over to Brent Dearman.
Fundraiser. Yeah, he's a fundraiser. Yep.
Yeah, he's a name you can recognize. He's got a national championship ring he can wear. I mean, he can say all these great things about how he puts guys in the NFL. And that naturally builds the Kansas recruit base. And then you just hand the keys over to Brent Dearman, who's a good coach and knows what he's doing. But
now they don't have him either. So.
Yeah, no, that plan went down the toilet.
Yep, very quickly.
Very quickly. Let's go to some basketball recruiting since we're talking about recruiting.
Yeah.
How about Caleb Grill being a likely pick to come back to Ames?
I mean, I don't know. If he comes back and he's good, good for him. I understood why he transferred the first time. He didn't play very well here at all. Didn't get many minutes. And the guy he was originally committed to out of high school was at UNLV. So he's clearly tied to TJ for sure. And so right now he's in the transfer portal, and I mean, all signs are pointing that he's coming back. So if it works out, great. I'm not like, I'm not gonna like, if Caleb Grow commits tomorrow, I'm not gonna all of a sudden change. I don't think the Vegas over under for wins is gonna skyrocket. I don't think.
No, what do you think the over under for wins is? Has it been set yet?
I don't think I would be very surprised if it's been set. I mean, conference wins. Kansas State's probably gonna be bad again next year. Who knows what Texas Tech's gonna look like?
Who knows?
I mean, they'll probably still be decent. Texas Tech, who knows? Good. Kansas, TCU will probably not be very good. She'll be, what Oklahoma State will look like without Cade. Who knows? Or who knows what Oklahoma's going to look like with Porter Moser? Could be pretty good. I'm sure Big 12 basketball will be good in general, just like it always is.
It's always fun to watch.
Over under for conference wins next year, I think I'm putting it at like 3.5.
3.5. Would you take the over or the under on that? You set the line, so you got a number in mind.
I know. I'm thinking if I had to place something on that line, I think I'd probably pick it's a good line when you can't decide which one side you want to be on.
Right.
I'm gonna say over. I think they'll be Kansas State, TCU, and
Tech.
Kansas State, TCU, and I don't know about Tech. It might be Tech. We'll say Kansas State, TCU, and Tech at home, and maybe beat Kansas State on the road. Something like that.
That's pretty fair. I mean, I just want to beat Iowa next year. Oh, I want that so bad in basketball. Probably won't happen. But
I don't know how good Iowa. I honestly have no idea how good Iowa's going to be. I mean, the two twins from Cedar Rapids are pretty good. If Weiskamp and Bohannon both come back, they might be decent. But without Garza, I mean,
who knows?
Who knows?
Going back to over-unders, what would you set the over-under for Iowa State football win total? Because this is probably the harder one.
Are you including just regular season, or are you including bowl
just
game?
Regular season, not postseason, not championships, not Big 12 championship, just out of the 12 guaranteed?
I would set it at 9.5.
9.5?
Yep.
Would you take the over or the under?
Over.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty easy over. If I'm being completely honest, I'm already counting a loss.
I think there's a perfectly reasonable chance that they finish either undefeated or with one loss.
I
undefeated
keep on
would
wanting
be tough
to
because you'd have to beat Oklahoma at home, but
yeah. Well, I keep on wanting to believe that, but we always have a bad loss or a weird loss or a fluky loss somewhere, and I think it's going to come from a not too great Oklahoma State.
I hate saying this. I'm assuming you beat UNI. I hate saying it because UNI sucks. I hate playing UNI so much.
I hate playing them so much.
I hate playing them.
They treat it like a rivalry game.
They do.
It's terrible. And we don't even get up for it. We don't get up for it.
Hopefully they do, because 2 years ago they almost blew it. And Brock Purdy, the only reason they didn't was because Brock Purdy jumped on the fumble. Hopefully Brock Purdy's like goes up to all the young players and says, by the way, you do not mess around with UNI. You do not mess around with them, because they can and will beat you if you mess around.
Right. I'm hoping that leadership's there, because
hopefully this time around
last time.
Will McElvain doesn't turn into Johnny Manziel. But
that was ridiculous. A wild run at the end of the game.
It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. This is this random tiny freshman quarterback just running around like literally looked like Johnny Manziel running around. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was in the stadium. I actually had to leave because I started having a panic attack, because that was not a good day. I got a little bit beard up, just to lightly buzz. And then I went out there and it was a bad time.
Yep. Yeah, you beat UNI. I think they're going to beat Iowa. I think Iowa's overrated going into the season. Then maybe they've got a pretty solid defense. I think they've got they lost Davion Nixon, and they lost a couple other good players. The offense was very uninspiring last year. Yeah. I don't see any reason to believe they're going to be better.
But they're always that next man up school.
Chris Doyle was a terrible human being, but he was a really, really good strength coach. And so,
Well,
what does it
aside from
look
those
like
like
when?
10 kids he put in the hospital.
Well, okay, yeah, but I
I
mean,
mean,
generally speaking, considered to be one of the best at his
at his
job
job.
in the United States. Um, so what does Iowa look like on the lines without Chris Doyle? You know, they didn't have him
Yeah.
last year, but they only missed like a couple months. It wasn't that big a deal. Um, now you're a full year, over a year, missing him. You lose a couple other really big pieces. You know, what do they look like? Um, I think you beat Iowa at home, and I think UNLV is horrible. I mean, they're a terrible, terrible, terrible team. They were, I think they were fourth worst in the F last year. They were really, per S&P Plus. They were terrible.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason to believe they've gotten better. So hopefully a really good road trip where we can just go enjoy Vegas, watch a game in a cool stadium, and watch Iowa State throttle UNLV,
Murder somebody.
just murder somebody. Then, you know, conference ramps up pretty nicely. I think you've got for a team that typically starts a little bit slow and is playing their best ball, 2/3 of the way into the season through the end of the season. That's when your hard games are, and that's when you want to do when you're playing your best ball. So, there's opportunities up front where Iowa State can win games without playing perfect, or even really they can. There's a couple of those games where they don't really have to play that great, and they can still
They
win
can
those
bring their
games.
C game to a couple of those.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's not
Uh,
typical for Iowa State.
I think there's a really good chance they go undefeated. They're undefeated going into Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, I'll be able to make a more confident prediction on that once we see Oklahoma State for a couple games, because the hard part about this is that Iowa State is kind of a known commodity at this point. Like, we have generally a pretty good idea, at least, at what the floor looks like for Iowa State for next year. Um, they can be undefeated good, but their floor is probably somewhere like 8 wins or something like that. Um,
Right.
I mean, well, I shouldn't say the floor is probably 7, but I would say that I mean, like some catastrophic would have to go wrong to get to 7 wins. Um, but I mean, um, you know, but there's a lot of other schools that they play that are far less known. Oklahoma State, we don't know what they're going to look like with you lose your two best players and a couple really big players in defense. Who knows? Um, and then, but if you can beat them at home, then you've got Texas at home. This is in order, but um, Kansas State on the road is going to be a little bit tricky. I don't like playing in Manhattan. We don't
No,
play
that one's
well.
always ugly.
Yeah, we don't play very well in Manhattan, but I think you can squeak that one out. Just get
It's
out of
also a
there with a
hard
win.
place to
Don't care what it
kick,
looks like. Yeah,
especially when
I
that's
don't
been
care
like
what
the
that.
heel or the
Yeah,
Achilles.
it's like I don't care what that game looks like. Just get a win. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um, then if you can beat Texas at home, which who knows what Texas is going to look like. I mean, it's just a total overhaul of that entire deal. I mean, yeah, they kept Bijan Robinson, who's really good, no denying that. Um, you have a new guy coming in at quarterback, the Casey Thompson kid, who looked
Could be
really good
Hudson Card,
against
apparently.
he or Hudson Card, one of those two. Casey Thompson looked good against Colorado.
I mean, a
Whatever,
lot of teams looked pretty good against Colorado
a lot of
last
teams,
year.
yeah, look good
They only
against
played like
Colorado
5 games.
in a dome in Texas. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
um, how
Not great, Bob.
yeah, how much does that mean? But and then they've got Sark. Who knows? Because that whole program needs a culture overhaul, and culture overhauls take a little bit of time.
Why do you say that?
I mean, you can look. Texas has needed a culture overhaul since Mac Brown left. Um, or really since, if you talk to Texas fans too, they can kind of trace the steps to after Texas won the national title in whatever it was, 05 or whatever it was. Um,
Yeah.
After that, and then we're
Oh,
and
nine.
after their net after the well that was the last appearance, I thought. Or
That might have
what
been,
was the
yeah, that
last year
might
they
be the
went to
last
the
appearance.
title when they played Alabama as Colt McCoy? I think that was 09.
Yeah, that was 09.
After that, they started kind of falling apart because Mac Brown started focusing on the wrong things, and then Charlie Strong had some problems, and then Tom Herman and all this.
The one thing I
Um,
always said about Charlie Strong is, if I was a parent, I would love for my kids to play for Charlie Strong.
sure,
If
sure,
I thought my kid had a real shot at the NFL, I would not send them to play for Charlie Strong.
sure. Um,
He's a good
and
man.
Tom Herman is well known to be kind of a
Prick.
yeah, That's probably the nice way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. I
He's
mean,
not.
he
He's
did kiss
not.
his players.
I would not consider most people that like would know Tom Herman would not consider him to be like an outstanding human being.
No.
um, uh, and there, I mean, when you have that kind of talent and still only perform where Texas performs, it's a culture problem. Because
Yeah.
look at Alabama. They recruit basically the same as Texas, but they don't have a culture problem and they win national titles.
I think part of it too is a X's and O's problem. I mean, why would you hire Mike
Yeah,
Yurcich?
X's and
We've
O's
seen
problem.
him at Oklahoma State for a long time, and they've always been really inconsistent with Mike Yurcich. Like
Yep.
hot, cold, hot, cold. It just if it worked, it looked amazing, and you hung 60 on your opponent. If it didn't work, you struggled to put 20 up. And so
Right.
when he went out
So
and hired Mike
yeah, I mean,
Yurcich, I
there's
just
there,
didn't
but
get it.
Texas needs a cultural overhaul. Texas needs a cultural overhaul, just like Texas Tech does, and Texas Tech needs one bad. They both need one, and those things take time. And so I think there's reason to believe that Texas takes a step back this year and then comes back the next year. I think there's a reason to believe that that's probably happened. But I think you can beat Texas at home. I think that's a winnable game. I think they'll be favored. Um, so you can be undefeated going into the second last game of the season at Oklahoma
Oh,
with a shot
not looking forward to that.
at. Oh, I'm so looking forward to that. Oh, I love playing Oklahoma. We play them close all the time, even at their place.
I
I
love
love
playing him
playing
in
Oklahoma.
October, not so much in November.
I'm not worried about it. I think. I
I
mean,
mean,
well, I should like. I'm not.
I'm worried,
I'm
but
worried about winning the game, but I'm not like. I don't think like we're not going to get embarrassed. That's not
I
going to
mean,
happen.
Dave Andrews has fixed that sort of second half fall off
Yes,
issue,
100%.
and he's been amazing.
And that was one thing that in our interview on Down the Pipe with Matt Campbell last week or 2 weeks ago, um,
That was
that
great,
he
by the way.
talked about a little bit. Thank you. That was a really fun interview. But he talked about what the kind of impact that he's had on the program, and when they hired him, I came out right away and said, man, I think we're gonna look at this in 5 years down the road, and we're gonna say this is the move that changed Iowa State football. It didn't that
Right,
took them from 7 wins to 10 wins. I mean,
like Chris Doyle without the racism. It's beautiful.
there you go. And it looks and plus if you were starting a Mortal Kombat game with anybody, like any strength coach in the conference, you'd pick Dave Andrews. Dude looks like a Mortal Kombat character.
There's that guy from Oregon with the handlebar mustache. I can never remember his name.
Yeah.
Uh, like weird hair,
Yeah.
handlebar mustache, jack like crazy. He looks like he could be a Mortal Kombat character.
But like Dave Andrews is like he's huge and he's got that beard that's multicolored. It's like
Oh,
part
it's
gray
beautiful.
and part gray and it's part black. It looks super cool. Like
Salt
it's
and pepper.
badass.
And
Yeah,
he's one of those guys who
but
can wear
it's
his
not salt
ball.
and pepper. It's not salt and pepper though. It is like black one place and gray on the sides. It's like black with gray trim. It's the weirdest thing, but it looks super cool. But
Okay.
anyways, so I thought I thought when he got hired, I thought it was an outstanding move. I thought it was exactly what they needed right at that point in time because it seemed like they had plateaued a little bit as from a strength and conditioning standpoint, and it's worked out perfectly. And I think, man, you saw it in the offensive line, you saw it in everybody. Everyone was fresh and ready. They were just as fresh
Yeah.
against Oklahoma earlier in the season as they were against West Virginia at
Or
the end.
Oklahoma at the end of the
I mean,
season.
they were
30 yards
or
from
Oklahoma at the end of the
victory
season.
right
Yeah, I
there.
mean,
So close.
yeah, they
It
were.
was beautiful.
And there's and they didn't have Trevor Downing all year. Their best individual offensive lineman, they didn't have him on the whole season, and the offensive line was
Yeah.
really good. And there's no reason to believe they won't be better next year. I think he's huge. Like I said, I still stand by that now. 4 years from now, we're gonna look back and say Dave Andrews, that hiring him was the reason. And if Iowa State is where we think they will be over the next 4 years, competing for Big 12 title berths at least, Big 12 title berths at least, if not titles outright, and flirting with the playoffs, kind of year in and year out type of thing. If they can continue to do that, Dave Andrews, we're gonna look back and say that was the move.
That was the
That's where it
critical
started.
move.
That was what pushed him over.
So if you could realign the Big 12 conference in any way, like you put on your czar hat, the only rules are
Sure.
it's got to be at least 10 and it can't be more than 14. What would you do?
Okay. So I would probably send West Virginia to the ACC. I
Sad to see him
would.
go.
Yeah, sad to see him go.
Culturally,
but
they
they're just not a
fit. Yeah,
Culturally,
culturally they fit, geographically
they
terrible.
fit in every single way except geographically, which is
Yep.
unfortunately that is a big factor in this. Um, I would probably so I'd send West Virginia to the ACC, and then I would pick up. I'd probably pick up Arizona and Arizona State,
Hmm.
and because Phoenix is a hotbed for recruiting now. If you look at
Matt
their
Campbell's
number of,
pipeline to
and I would say
Arizona
it's
is
get we got a
huge.
pipeline going there. If you look at actually, there was just a graphic that I just saw this morning, maybe that compared like overall the number of Power Five, the number of FBS offers in the area, um, and with a ratio of how many of those are Power Five offers, is actually almost identical to Houston. Like Phoenix is
Yeah,
keeping up with Houston in recruiting right now, which is
that's
huge. I mean,
huge.
it's
Yeah.
Houston pumps out recruits, and Phoenix is keeping up with them right now.
So you said Arizona,
Oh,
Arizona
sorry.
State, drop West
Yeah, Arizona,
Virginia.
Arizona State. Yes, yeah. And then I would probably also add. I think I'd bring back Nebraska, man. I think you got to bring Nebraska. Nebraska in the Big 12 makes way too much sense. They don't fit in the Big
Yeah.
10. They haven't been good in the Big 10. All the rivalries are here. Geographically, it makes more sense. Culture wise, it makes more sense.
Their fans are
I
apathetic towards the Big Ten now. If you don't
don't
even have to
care.
get them drunk anymore. They say they don't like it there. Used
Right.
to
Yeah. I
be
mean,
three,
and
four
after
years
after
ago.
this past season, when the Big Ten tried to throw them under the bus when they wanted to play football, and the Big Ten said no, Nebraska said they wanted to keep playing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they want to be back in the Big 12, and I think it makes it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I mean, the way that Bill Moose, I'm going to, this is my opinion. Got to state that first before I start saying anything. Bill Moose essentially kowtowed to the Big Ten and threw Scott Frost out there for a forced apology because they wanted to play football. Like, that's some messed up stuff. The football coach wants to coach his football team to play football, and you have to apologize for that? That's ridiculous. Personal opinion. Stop of personal opinions.
Sure.
So you had Nebraska, you
Yep.
have
And
Arizona,
the Arizona
Arizona
schools.
State,
Yep.
and then minus West Virginia.
Yeah, and you could probably, if you wanted to, so if you wanted to keep West Virginia, I'd be fine with dumping Baylor and
Really?
picking up Cincinnati.
Huh.
Cincinnati is perennially a much better program than Baylor. It's an Ohio recruiting footprint. It's a natural geographic partner for West Virginia. Um, Iowa State and Cincinnati have played each other in basketball a few different times, so there's a little bit of an established relationship there.
See, I thought you would have said Pitt. No?
Pitt in the ACC. I mean, I don't know. And Pitt doesn't really bring much. I mean, their football's fine, I guess. Their basketball sucks now. What does Pitt bring in? Cincinnati brings a good football team and generally speaking, a pretty good basketball team. They've been okay the last couple years since losing McCronin, but um,
See,
you know,
Pitt covers the Ohio and Pennsylvania footprint because it
I mean,
really does draw from both.
but
And then
but
it's
Pitt doesn't bring you
national
much. Pitt doesn't bring you much for like
oomph.
from an athletic standpoint at all.
Yeah. I don't know. They've got that natural rivalry with West Virginia. I want to say that's the backyard
The
brawl.
backyard brawl. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. I'm also on the same page as dumping West Virginia. Mine is a little different though. It's basically dump West Virginia, bring back Mizzou, bring back Nebraska, and close off Texas by bringing in A&M. That's the only reason I want A&M in is I just want the SEC to not be playing home games in Texas because then it's harder to sell it to recruits. If I'm
That's
being a
fair.
little honest.
Yeah. No, I get that. Um, yeah, I could be okay with that.
Basically, it's
Um,
the original Big 12
essentially, yeah.
plus TCU, and that's it.
I really like. I think TCU's been a great addition to the conference. I've really
Well, I was
enjoyed
kind of
TCU.
surprised that they brought Baylor instead of Texas Christian when the change happened. That like
Oh,
back in
back in
the early
'96 or
'90s,
whatever.
yeah, when they merged the Swick and the
Yeah,
Big
the
Eight.
Big Eight. Yeah,
Yeah, another one
yeah.
I'd be willing to take on is Arkansas. Actually,
Arkansas would be interesting.
they're geographically very close to Stillwater and kind of close to Norman. And if you bring in Mizzou, they're right next to Columbia.
Yep.
It would be it'd be an interesting one. Also, you get that old Swick rivalry of Texas and Arkansas.
Yeah. No, I think that could be a good option too. I mean, and there's a few other options scattered around where you could say you dump West Virginia and pick up Nebraska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin or something like that, and create a true Big 12 North or something along those lines.
I really don't like the idea of bringing in Wisconsin, though, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh man, an Iowa State Wisconsin rivalry would kick so much. Oh my god, it would be an incredible rivalry.
No, Iowa State, Minnesota. Now that would be an incredible rivalry. They
Know.
literally killed Jack Trice. I'm not attributing motivation. He died because of injuries sustained during the Minnesota football game.
Yeah.
Therefore,
but Wisconsin like culturally is like their tailgate scene is really awesome.
Madison's a great city.
Madison's a cool city. Man, I think I would really, and well, plus it's also actually closer. I actually live closer to Madison than I do Ames, so it's even a shorter drive for me. But man, I would love an Iowa State Wisconsin rivalry. I think that'd be
So
so
you
much
cross
fun.
the border for those Wisconsin beers, then?
Actually, I'm actually funny enough. I'm actually not a big fan of Spotted Cow.
Really? I've got a little bit left in the fridge.
It's okay. I can't. It doesn't get me excited. I don't know.
No,
No.
no, that's too bad. That's too bad. I've got some in the fridge and I love it.
I'm a big fan of Toppling Goliath up in Decorah.
Okay,
Good. I like that quite a bit. And Big Grove down in Iowa City.
so who's your favorite non-conference or non-rival team to hate? Doesn't have to be. It can be in the conference, but just non-rival team to hate.
The hate?
Yeah, like you feel better when they lose.
Wow. Are we not? I'm assuming we're saying besides Iowa.
So yeah, it can't be Iowa. They're a rival.
Can't be
It can't be K-State. Can't be Oklahoma State
Right,
because
yeah.
you declare them a rival. It can't be.
I'd
Mizzou.
like to see lose. I would say that's a tough one. I like to see Ohio State lose.
Pretty good one. I mean, it's a regional bias. It makes sense. You know, we're Midwest people.
I like to see Ohio State lose. So I happened to be a couple years ago when Ohio State went to Purdue and got smoked.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful.
In that game, I actually happened to be in Columbus that day at a buddy. I was visiting a buddy in Columbus, and we were watching it in his basement. And I will never forget the absolute meltdown that those guys were having in the second half of that game. It was unbelievable.
It was beautiful. It was a lovely game. I remember I was like, I'm not gonna watch Purdue get stomped by a number 4 Ohio State or whatever they were. No. See, that's a good one, but I'm gonna say the best team to hate is the University of Georgia at Athens.
I can understand that.
There's solid reasoning. Number one, they spell a 3-letter word with 4 letters. Okay. And half of them are wrong.
Yeah.
Half of them don't go in that word.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to be a university of higher education, and you spell dog, D-A-W-G, wrong. Yes. Just get out of here. Second, Athens, Georgia, is the most overrated place I've ever been to. Sanford Stadium, not great. I mean, it's fine. It wasn't a great viewing experience for me. Didn't like it. Just University of Georgia at Athens.
Yeah.
Worst. I feel better when they lose.
Fair enough.
I like the fact that Kirby Smart is basically just Mark Richt reincarnated. My only hope is that they fire Kirby Smart to hire Mario Cristobal, who's basically just the same guy as Kirby Smart.
Right. Yep.
I want to keep on that line of futility.
Right. Yeah. I would. Yeah.
You also have to hear about them constantly, and then they never do anything.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's another one that I would put in there. I think I'm going to stick with Ohio State, but
that's fair. Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I'm not a huge fan of Ohio State either. You know, you grow up in Michigan, and you kind of have to hate the whole state of Ohio. Like, it's a requirement. I wasn't even a Michigan fan. I was a Michigan State fan. Yeah. But you still don't like Ohio.
Yeah, you got to get rid of Ohio. Yeah.
So what would you say your realistic expectations are for Coach Oates?
Otzelberger?
Yeah, Coach TJ Otzelberger.
Gotcha. Reseason, I don't think you should have hardly any. I think this is year 0. This isn't even year 1. This is year 0. He's got a full rebuild job to do. He's got to retool the entire roster. It's going to be really young. I have zero expectations for this coming season, with the exception that I want them to look competent on offense. That's what I want to see. They don't have to be good on defense, honestly. I just want them to look competent on offense. Because if they're competent on offense, I can watch and I can cheer for them. All this, no problem. Um, Beyond that, it's hard to say because what are fair expectations at Iowa State? I know we like to think of ourselves as a basketball school, but historically we're slightly above
Mediocre.
average. We're average. We're a very average basketball school historically. Now, recently, obviously, we've generally speaking been better. But historically, we're an average school. So I think, I mean, like realistic expectations for Iowa State basketball are to be top 4 in the conference, top 4, doing well in the conference tournament and getting the NCAA tournament, maybe winning a game.
That's post rebuild though, right?
Post rebuild. During the rebuild, I think next year you have no expectations, and then you can set expectations for the next year once you see what happens in 2021, 2022. You can the season after you kind of have to wait to set expectations until after this coming season just to see where they're at, because this year they're building off of nothing, and they have nothing to go off of. They're basically building this thing from scratch. Now you've got Tyrese Hunter, really good player, still just gonna be a true freshman. And that's assuming he stays. I think he will, but
yeah, I think
he hasn't committed yet, so I'm not gonna. So it's hard to say.
Rasir Bolton's coming back.
Actually, officially announced that now. I mean, I know he put out a thing. A few weeks ago, but then I've heard
it was on Twitter a little while back. I don't know if that's
well,
as
but
official
I've heard since then it's not quite so official. But I don't know.
I'd believe you. I'm not as plugged in.
I would say he committed, but that was before the coaching change. And since the coaching change, I haven't heard anything that would suggest that he's like guaranteed to come back. Right. But anyways, you're working with very, very, very few pieces next year, so I don't think you could really have, when you're cupcake non-conference games, maybe win a couple in conference and be okay with that. I mean, next year is gonna be a losing season. They're not gonna make the tournament. And that's your expectations should not be that they make the tournament. They should be win a couple games at home, play well at home, be competitive-ish on the road be competitive for sure against the middle of the pack, and try to see what you can do against the top of the pack. That's what they should be. That's what you should shoot for next year.
Show me something to build on, basically.
Show me something. So give me a reason for hope. Give me something to be hopeful for. If they're generally not great as a team, but Tyrese Hunter can, that there's people coming in to help him, that's probably enough.
Right.
But beyond that, there's no reason to think. I don't know if expectations is the right word, but as far as potential goes, there's potential just because of the offensive system we know he kind of wants to run. His acumen for building rosters and building them around the scheme he wants to run. Generally speaking, which is very similar to Fred. I think there's a reason to believe that Ott's ceiling or his potential is that he's Fred, but doesn't want to bounce for the NBA. Right. I think there's a reason to believe that is his potential. He could be every bit as the coach, the X's and O's guy as Fred is, because he learned under Fred, and a bunch of under a bunch of other coaches too. And he's a proven program builder. He likes recruiting. That's what he's really good at, as opposed to like Fred, who famously was not big on recruiting. And wanted to go to the NBA.
When Naz and George come back and say, "Get this man this job. This is great," you got to kind of feel good about it.
Yeah, it's funny because when it was first announced, I was personally not sold on it. I wish I would have liked to hear that they interviewed Porter Moser, or
right.
I don't know if it was ever realistic or not, but Dana Altman would be another one. There's a Craig Smith from Utah State. At least her reviewed those. But now, and I'll fully admit that's where I was at the time, and I've changed my tune a little bit. I think I'm to the point now where I'm fine with the hire. I'm excited about where it can go. I think he, after his press conference, I think he's got as good a shot as anybody to have success here because of his ties. He wants to be here. I mean, you can tell that he's the kind of guy that if he takes Iowa State to a Final Four, he's not going to bolt for Duke or something like that. I mean, he's going to, there's a reason to believe that he if he's successful, has Matt Campbell type tendencies where he wants to be here because he likes the challenge, he likes the community, he likes the culture, he wants to win here as opposed to just job hopping. TJ Otzelberger is not a job hopper, at least not anymore, because this is kind of his dream job. He's, he came
Pretty
up
much.
here. His wife is a legend here. And their whole everything, all right, like TJ, his roots all come back to Ames. So there's reason to believe that even if he's really, really good and we go to a Final Four or something like that, he's not just going to up and leave like a Chris Beard.
Right. Yeah, that was not a good look for Texas Tech. And that really just not a good look for Chris Beard, who not even months before
that dude went from
like
lovable underdog that's really good at his job to just total snake and he's like, it's impossible.
He went full on wrestling heel.
Yeah,
he went full on wrestling heel.
He is like next season it's going to be very difficult to cheer for Chris Beard. Whereas this season, like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I like watching Texas Tech because they're cool. Chris Beard's a good dude or whatever, so they like cheering for Chris Beard. It's going to be impossible. Now he's part of the evil empire.
Right.
I mean, he's Anakin when he went. He's Anakin when he went dark
slaughtered
side.
Those younglings.
Yeah. He's Anakin when he went dark side. Like, I mean, that's what just happened to Chris Beard. So it's going to be impossible to cheer for him.
So, talking about coaches turning tail and not turning tail, how do we keeping Matt Campbell? Like, everybody says he's going to be gone every year.
Dude,
Street.
Man, it's fun. I think if you asked me this question 2 or 3 years ago, I'd been like, I don't know, like, but we are, and Jamie's doing what he can. But at this point, we're settled into this thing so far. I mean, he's had 100 different chances to leave for a bunch of bigger programs, and he hasn't taken any of them, including the NFL, and a lot of different college jobs that would be really good.
Yeah, no, he hasn't taken any of those.
Matt Campbell's an interesting one because now that I've had a chance to actually talk to him, I mean, I believe it when he says he wants to be here. He loves the challenge. I believe it, man. That dude is passionate about not just winning, not just doing what he does with building his culture, building his program. He likes to do it here. Like he's passionate about doing it at Iowa State. His relationship with Jamie Pollard is phenomenal, is
insane,
outstanding. And Jamie keeps helping him out, building the new nutrition center, building all these new facilities, giving Matt Campbell plenty of leash, making sure to pay his assistants, doing everything. Jamie is doing everything he needs to do to keep Matt Campbell happy. And by doing that, you keep Matt Campbell in Ames. And that is how you do it.
And if I'm being completely honest, I don't care how bad the basketball team is if the football team's that good.
The football team is as good as they are right now. It really honestly doesn't matter.
We can be bad at basketball.
I'm fine. I'm fine with it. But because being better at football is better than being good at basketball. Unless you're Kansas or Kentucky or Duke, where like basketball is your entire deal and like that is your entire moneymaker. If you're not those guys, which Iowa State will never be one of those. Even though we're like
decades of continued success.
It takes half a century of continued winning. Which so theoretically anybody can become a blue blood, but it's a matter of time. It's such a long and difficult road to get there. You can assume that Iowa State will not get there, and so given that Iowa State will not be one of those just absolute forever blue bloods in college basketball, it's better to be a football school than it is to be a basketball school. 100%.
Absolutely,
not even.
It's better to be mediocre at football than great at basketball.
Kind of is actually. There's a lot of truth to that.
Revenue wise, especially.
Yep. And you know what there's a little bit of a trend happening too, where guys are not bolting for big jobs immediately. Where younger guys are more okay
planting
with
roots.
Sticking around. Yeah. Like Luke Fickell at Cincinnati is a great example.
I think he's got one job in mind, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, yeah. Ohio State is his job, but Ryan Day ain't going anywhere. Nobody gets fired from Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, he might not be going.
You only get fired from Ohio State amid scandal. That is the only way that you get that, because it's impossible to lose at Ohio State. It is impossible.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, he might not. He might take an NFL leap. It's completely possible. I just don't know that he wants it. Like, I'm not going to attribute anybody's motivations.
Is being the head coach at Ohio State really that much of a step down from an NFL job? I mean, to be honest,
I think what wears on coaches, especially young guys who get jobs pretty early, is recruiting, and you have to be built for it a certain way.
Sure.
I've never heard anything negative about his tenacity during recruiting, but there are guys that get up for recruiting. Nick Saban's one of them. Like, he loves to beat somebody in a head-to-head recruiting battle. There are guys who aren't built for recruiting. Jim Harbaugh.
Sure.
Jim Harbaugh treats recruiting like a chore, and he doesn't like it. And it's honestly painful to watch Michigan football in general. Thank you, Jim. But I don't know if Day's that guy.
Yeah. So, Matt loves building programs. He loves building culture. I mean, he's got a really good spot right now. He makes he still doesn't have an agent to my knowledge. I mean,
no, he does not.
If you care about money, you hire an agent.
Yes.
Like that's what you like.
Yeah.
Like Chris Beard needs to get a new agent because he just took a pay cut to go to Texas. But extraordinary level of to take a pay cut to go to Texas. But
I don't know how you can do that. That's just ridiculous.
Awful.
They have more money than anybody else, and you take a pay cut to go there.
Whereas guys like Dana Altman and Mark Turgeon and Mike Gundy have exceptional agents because they don't go anywhere, but they keep getting pay raises because they keep getting rumored for every job.
Well, Coach Campbell should really start turning some of these rumors into, something a little more substantial if he wants those big pay raises, but I guess he doesn't.
But he doesn't care about them. Doesn't care. Like, it would not shock me if Matt Campbell doesn't actually know how much money he makes. It would not surprise me to hear that. Because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the money. As long as he has enough to support his family, which he's got more money than God now. So it doesn't even matter.
Right.
So he's got enough money to last him and his family for the rest of his life. None of them will ever have to work. Doesn't even matter.
Multiple times over.
Multiple times. So the money is no longer an issue, and his assistants get paid. He gets new facilities when he wants them. What else can you ask for? Besides getting everything that you want, what else could you reasonably ask for? And he loves the challenge of bringing in. He got the black uniform, so it's like, I asked him in that podcast like 5 years ago. It'd have been sacrilegious to think that Iowa State was going to wear black, and here we are wearing black for like half the games. And everybody's on, and most people are on board.
I don't love it, but I'm okay with it. Like, oh no, I don't love it. I'd rather see more gold than anything else. Like, I really like the gold color.
See, and this is I heard this, but I have absolutely no way to verify this. But I have heard that Matt hates the gold uniforms. I wish I would have asked him about that, but
right.
When
completely unsubstantiated.
It's totally unsubstantiated, but just a thing that I heard one time is that Matt Campbell hated the gold uniforms. And
they can go really south real quick, like the Iowa gold uniforms.
Gold uniforms
can be rockets.
Gold uniforms can be bad pretty quickly. So I don't know. I love the black uniforms. I have flat out asked him if we could wear them against Iowa on the podcast, and he's like, I don't even know, man. But it's funny though, because he didn't say no.
He didn't. That's true. Like,
he didn't say no to wearing black uniforms against Iowa.
Maybe that would lead to some good interceptions. Oh, throw to the guy in black.
Yeah. But anyways, so plus, oh man, can you imagine Iowa fans and their heads just exploding, just twisting straight off their necks if Iowa State beat Iowa while wearing black? It would just
it would unleash a can of worms we've never seen.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be Winona Ryder at the award at that one award at the Emmys or the Oscars or whatever it was, and she's just like.
For those of you audio only, Levi looked like a confused tortoise who ran out of shell.
But he gets everything he wants, and if you're getting everything that you want, what's the reason to leave? Because there's no outside pressure on him to keep doing this, keep doing that, or whatever. It's like, keep winning football games, man. That's it. We're not. Nobody here is gonna get upset if they don't win a Big 12 title. Like no one's like. It could be 5 years down the road, and we're just getting the Big 12 title game, not quite getting over the hump. Nobody here, like Matt Campbell's job security will still be 100%. Like he's never gonna get fired for competing for Big 12 championships.
And it's not like Tennessee and Alabama where those boosters are so financially invested that
Texas,
they come. Oh, Texas, there
where it's just constantly on you all the time. It's boosters, 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 boosters. And though you talk to them more than you talk to the AD.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I would say it's not like that. They've got a couple really good, a couple really nice donors, big donors, or whatever, like the Sukups and stuff like that, that can pay for stuff
But the
when they need it.
demands are not there.
But they're not demanding different things. They're not calling for people's heads, for not making the playoff or something like that. The expectations are lower. The praise is higher or high or higher than it would be at a big school. You have an AD that does it whatever you want. You're basically worshipped as a demigod in this area. I mean, like he's gonna
Yeah.
have a statue. Like he's going to.
He's
Gonna
he's
have
gonna
a
have more
statue.
than Saban.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna have a statue at the stadium. It's just gonna happen. And I mean, unless he lives like next year. If he's here for 10 years, he's got a statue.
Oh yeah. And
And
I've had the
at
good
this
pleasure of
point,
meeting him.
in time, I have no reason to believe he's not going to be here for 10 years.
Right. And I've had the good pleasure of meeting him at the Applebee's during the coach's corner
Nice.
on Mondays. Unfortunately, he always shows up when I'm already drunk. So like
Yes.
I go in for the hug and the picture, and I'm like reeking of booze, and I just feel like such a bad person. Like he only ever meets me when I'm drunk.
He judges you so hard.
Right. I feel like I'm letting him down. I'm like
the only
I
person's
promise I'm
opinion that
not an
matters
alcoholic.
right now, and like the only person's opinion that matters in that entire zip code is Matt Campbell's. That's the only one that matters. And you talk to, it's funny if you talk to him too, the whole time you're just thinking, oh my God, please like me, please like me, please like me. That's all you're thinking the whole time you're talking to him.
Oh yeah, my girlfriend calls him Coach Dad.
Yeah,
because she's like, I don't want to disappoint him. He's such a fatherly man.
I don't want, like, if I like whenever you are with Matt Campbell in person, you just don't want to disappoint him. You want to make Matt Campbell proud.
Yeah,
that's all you want to do. And
Coach, was this a good interview?
He's like, how did I do, Coach? But
can we watch the film on this together, and you can tell me where I can
we do
better?
film review on this interview? Yeah. So it's like, he's just built different, man. He just does what he does what he wants to do. He doesn't try to be anybody he's not. He just does what he wants to do, and he has an entire community and an AD that's supportive of him doing whatever he wants to do.
Anything.
As long as he's winning football games.
Are you a baseball fan?
I'm a Cardinals fan. Yep.
Cardinals fan? Okay. So I wanted to play a game called Baseball Nicknames.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a series of nicknames, and I just want you to name who the player is.
Okay. I'll do my best. We'll see.
Okay. So this guy has 3 nicknames. I'll give you the first one, and if you want the second, ask for it. Hammer and Hank.
Hank Aaron.
No. Second one. Hankus Pankus. This is his second nickname.
Okay.
Hankus Pankus. I've been looking forward to just saying this on air. Hankus Pankus.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. The Hebrew Hammer.
Feels like I've heard that one.
All 3 of these belong to the same guy.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard that one.
He's a real old timer, so it might be hard to come up with, but I really just wanted to say Hankus Pankus on air.
Well, yeah, what decade would he have been?
50s. American League.
Yeah. Wait.
Tigers.
The Tigers?
Mm-hmm.
The only Tiger I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is Al Kaline, but that's not him.
Nah, he's 60s, 70s.
Yeah. 50s for the Tigers. I don't know.
I might need to double check that.
I feel like I've
sorry,
heard
40s. 30s and 40s.
Hebrew Hammer from the 30s and 40s?
Yep, he is a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. His nicknames are Hammer and Hank, Hankus Pankus, and the Hebrew Hammer.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard the Hebrew Hammer before. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to give up on that one.
Hank Greenberg.
Oh, I wouldn't have got that.
No. Okay. Who is the Chicken Man? I only have one for him. I'm sure he's got more.
Chicken Man?
The Chicken Man.
When did he play?
I want to say 80s. I'll look it up real quick.
What team?
I also have to look that up. I just know he's the Chicken Man, and I think it's National League. He played for the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Rays. So he's American League from the 80s to the late 90s. The Chicken Man.
Is he like good, or is it just a name?
Yes, he is a Hall of Famer as well, and he was
For
a
the
first ballot.
Red Sox, Yankees, and Rays.
Mm-hmm. And he won a '96 World Series with the Yankees. He's also a noted alcoholic, like serious drinker,
Noted alcoholic.
like serious drinker. Uh, Always Sunny did an episode about him.
I'm gonna kick myself. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I feel like I'm gonna like kick myself for not getting this.
It'll be Wade Boggs.
Oh, okay. Why is it the Chicken Man?
I honestly don't know.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
It doesn't. But when I saw that, I was like,
I mean, when you say
okay,
Wade Boggs,
is...
I mean that makes sense. I mean Wade Boggs, that checks out. But like, why? But the Chicken Man? Like,
it makes no sense at all.
okay, well that's probably why I was thinking. I was just thinking of somebody that would qualify for that. Because like, I mean, when you said the Chicken Man, I was like, I bet it's Raleigh Fingers. Chicken fingers.
Chicken fingers. It makes sense. No, it made no sense why he was called the Chicken Man. I saw it and I was like, okay, this has to be a question because
All right.
that's just insane.
Huh.
And
I've never heard that one in my life.
I'm now going to go over to some St. Louis Cardinals player nicknames. Okay. So these should be in your wheelhouse.
Okay.
Okay. Bad news.
Bad news.
Bad news. He was an early baseball player, 1800s.
Oh, I won't know this one.
Okay. No his name was Jim Galloway. I'm not huge on the National League. Okay. How about Sexy Dexy?
What years?
He is going to be in our time frame from. He played for the Cardinals from 17
Dexter
to
Fowler?
20. Yeah.
Okay.
How about? Ooh. Trying to see who's Yachty.
Yadier Molina.
Yeah, that one was too easy.
Easy. Yeah, it's too easy.
Yeah, too easy. Who's the Machine?
The Machine.
He's very famous. He's still playing. Not for the Cardinals anymore.
Like Albert Pujols?
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason I couldn't remember that. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I feel like I've heard him called the Machine before, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, that one never really stuck. I always just knew him as
Big
Albert Pujols. Yeah.
Or Fat Albert is the other one that I've heard.
Really? I've not heard that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right. How about Zamboni? Played for the Cards from 72 to 75, and then again from 77 to 80.
Zamboni.
No real reason why he should be called Zamboni.
Okay. What position?
Let me look.
Zamboni.
Third base.
I'm not sure.
That would be Ken Wright.
I don't think I would have gotten that one.
No. Okay, here's one from a Hall of Famer, so this should be more recent and understandable. The Wizard.
Ozzy.
Yeah. And that was baseball nicknames.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Need some.
I always thought baseball had the best nicknames.
But yeah, baseball has good nicknames. Yeah.
We didn't even get around to the Twister Sisters.
Whew. No, we didn't. But
that means I guess you just got to come on again. Huh?
Yeah.
What a shame.
I got no problem doing this. I wouldn't do anything else. I mean, the only reason I'm leaving at 3 is because I'm going for a motorcycle ride. But yeah, no, it's good. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you, Mr. Levi. If you want more content from Levi Stevenson, you can find him at Levi R. Stev on Twitter, or you can find him at Wide Right and Natty Light on Twitter. They also have the YouTube channel, Wide Right and Natty Light. That is where the show The Nightcap will be taking place. So, I wanted to talk a little bit of NFL draft before I ended the show, and one of the things I want to talk about is just how uncomfortable I'm feeling about what I'm seeing from mock drafters, and it seems like nobody really knows anything about evaluating talent aside from the people who get paid to evaluate talent. Yet every time around this time of year, we have to hear a bunch of Todd McShays and Mel Kipers out there sounding off. If they get 6 picks right, it's considered a miracle. They usually aren't very accurate, and they're supposed to be for entertainment. And I understand that. But at a certain point in time, I'm uncomfortable seeing the Detroit Lions at number 7 overall with Penei Sewell on the board potentially drafting Devontae Smith. 170-pound wide receivers really aren't exactly known for being durable in the NFL, and it just doesn't make any sense. I'm not a fan of what these people are putting their faith into in these mock drafts. Sure, he had a lot of great tape on college. Sure, he looked like a great wide receiver. But size does matter in the NFL. A 200-plus pound safety flying into Devontae Smith is going to end his whole career, potentially, because he's only 170 pounds. Size matters. The NFL isn't a one-size-fits-all league. It's the best freak athletes of all freak athletes. I'm not talking about every time he's getting covered, he's going to be taking on more physical guys than him, but at a certain point, you have to count on him taking a big hit. Can you count on Devontae Smith taking a big hit? You didn't really see it much in college, if at all. I just don't believe it. And if you're looking at a premium left tackle there, why are you not thinking about taking your premium left tackle? We've got a good left tackle, but good isn't elite. And Taylor Decker does look a lot more like a right tackle than a left tackle. So Sewell to the left spot, Decker to the right makes perfect sense. Makes too much sense. And that's why I don't like these mock drafts. Things that make sense don't happen. And then other silly things like the Cincinnati Bengals, number 4 overall, neglecting to take care of Joe Burrow and taking Kyle Pitts. He doesn't need a weapon. The next offensive lineman in Cincinnati will be the first offensive lineman in Cincinnati. They were really not built up front to protect Joe Burrow. If you want to be taken seriously, then you have to do serious things like, protect your quarterback. And I don't think these mock drafts are thinking at all about what Cincinnati's actually going to do. They're just trying to say how much they love Kyle Pitts. Guess what? He's a tight end. You know what's great about tight ends? They do a lot of stuff. You know what's bad about tight ends? They do a lot of stuff. So if you're drafting a tight end in the top 10, you should probably reevaluate your whole life. It doesn't matter who it is. You do not draft tight ends in the top 10. They're either going to be run blocking and not doing a great job at that, or they're going to be pass catching and not doing a great job at that, because it takes 2 or 3 years to get them to NFL speed. And number 4 overall picks to usually get in the tens of millions of dollars. So you're paying a guy tens of millions of dollars when you could have had the same amount of production later in the draft. It does not make sense to draft tight ends at the top of the draft. Same thing with corners. If you're in the top 10, it means you failed at one of these 3 positions. Protecting your quarterback, having a quarterback, or getting after the other team's quarterback. It's pretty simple. What you need to do if you're a real football team is you need to draft like you failed at one of those 3 things, because I guarantee you every team in the top 10, aside from the Miami Dolphins, who just, well, I guess the San Francisco 49ers now, because they traded with the Dolphins, who traded with the Houston Texans, who didn't protect Deshaun Watson and didn't get after the other team's quarterback and really didn't do anything right aside from fire Bill O'Brien. It's about the only thing they did right last year. So I'm looking at all these mock drafts, and if you're not taking an offensive tackle in the top 10, and you're not taking an edge rusher, and you're not taking a D tackle who can get after a quarterback, and you're not taking a quarterback, you're not taking offensive line, what are you doing in the top 10? What are you thinking? Are you thinking, oh, we'll get him next year, and you're going to put Joe Burrow out there to get smoked? That's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Getting a little ranty here. But at a certain point in time, these mock drafts, they just need to stop or start making sense. Because if the Cincinnati Bengals take Kyle Pitts and don't protect Joe Burrow, you know who's going to have something to say about that? The guy who they consider their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow. Not smart. And for the record, I like my Lions. I love them a lot. I want them to get a wide receiver. Not in the first round. Not in the top 10. If you can shore up the offensive line, that's great. Hey, I'd take Elijah Vera Tucker. I'd take Panay Sewell. I'd take Rashawn Slater. I'd even consider Tevin Jenkins or Elijah Vera Tucker. Those guys are all fine by me. That's protecting Jared Goff, who's not the most mobile quarterback and who needs a clean pocket to have success in this league. And, we've got DeAndre Swift. You know what he needs? Somebody up front bullying other guys. You know what he doesn't have right now? Somebody up front bullying other guys. So now I'm looking at that as a potential. What about Jalen Phillips? What about Gregory Rousseau? Those are both edge rushers from Miami. I don't know which one's better. One of them sat out this year. I don't know who's better, but I'm also not paid to know who's better. I've got strong opinions that either one of them, if they're considered good enough to be the number one edge rusher, which most mocks have Rousseau or Phillips as the number one edge rusher, take him. If he grades out in your scouting department and you're the Detroit Lions and you had a bad time on defense last year, take him. Jeff Okudah isn't getting any better. He's probably going to be garbage again next year. He was bad this year, and he'll be bad next year. So, how do you help a bad corner? You get after the cornerback a little faster. Because, holy smokes, Jeff Okudah was burnt so often that they had to replace the batteries and the smoke detectors in Ford Field because they just kept on going off because he was getting burnt all the time. That leaves quarterback. Is there going to be a quarterback at number 7 who's worth taking? No. Don't force it. If you're not in love, don't force it. You know what we got next year? 2 first-round picks. You know what we don't have to worry about next year? Building an offensive line if we have 2 first-round picks. You know what we have to worry about next year? Getting a quarterback if Jared Goff doesn't work out. We're on the hook for him for 2 years anyway. Might as well just sit there and see if he's good this year. See if maybe it was a McVay problem. I know a lot of people are already crowning McVay the king of all offensive minds, but let's be completely honest here. ESPN's article painted a much different picture of a micromanaging, egomaniacal coach who just stopped believing in his quarterback and started doing the emotional equivalent of kneecapping him with a lead pipe. I don't like the idea that just because he's Sean McVay, Jared Goff is going to revert to garbage. That's not how football works. I think Anthony Lynn is a much better offensive coordinator than people give him credit for. He did a lot to help develop the young Justin Herbert have the wildest rookie year we've ever seen for a quarterback. I like him. I think he's going to be great. You know who else I like? Mark Brunell, quarterback's coach. That's your positions coach, a former quarterback. You really can't ask for more if you're a current quarterback. That staff is actually the best staff I've ever seen the Lions hire. And that's saying something. I mean, they've hired a lot of staffs. So, I mean, I guess it's not really saying something because they're the Lions and a lot of the staffs they've hired have been garbage. Thanks, Matt Patricia. Jim Schwartz, thank you. The only one who was any good was Jim Caldwell. But I'm excited to see what's going to happen with this team. We're not in a rush to win now. I know that Coach Motor City Dan Campbell wants to win now. I don't think the fan base needs him to win now, though. I don't think there's a whole lot of pressure if next year we go out there and we only win a handful of games. If you can count the number of wins on one hand, that's not going to suddenly everybody's going to leave the Lions fan base. Believe it or not, we've been here for a long time, enduring a lot more losses. This time, at least, we're losing with purpose, it seems. I don't even know what number to put for the Lions for a win total because I don't even know who we've drafted. I don't know what the team's going to look like completely yet. I like the moves that Brad Holmes has been making, shoring up the secondary. Jeff Okudah's still bad, though. What's Aruwariye going to be? What's Okudah going to be? Hopefully not on my team anymore real soon because that was such a bad draft pick. That night, I think I almost had a myocardial infarction. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but pretty sure I saw it on Grey's Anatomy. Thought I died. Thought I was going to have a heart attack because that was the dumbest pick I've ever seen. It was telegraphed for months and months and months. The same thing with TJ Hawkinson. Everybody knew we were taking Hawkinson. Hawkinson was there. We took him. Guess what? Not even the best tight end out of Iowa that year. You can't even be the best tight end out of your own school. He's still not the best tight end out of his own school. And we were promised Kittle. You know what he is? A starter. He made it to the Pro Bowl because Jared Cook broke his leg. He made it to the Pro Bowl because Rudolph died and Engram had drop problems. He made it to the Pro Bowl because there was literally nobody else from the NFC who caught passes as a tight end. I mean, there's just no reason to really like that pick at all. I know a lot of Lions fans are still giving me grief because I said that was a stupid pick. Guess what? It was a stupid pick. We picked third next year. Guess what? We're picking seventh this year. He's not done a whole lot to help this team in the win column. You know what helps this team in the win column? A tackle who can get after the quarterback. You know what we don't have? A tackle who can get after the quarterback. We're thinking about going to the 3-4. That's the rumor, at least. Aaron Glenn wants to run a 3-4 defense. You know what we don't have? A nose guard. You know what helps run the 3-4? A nose guard. I mean, John Panisi is a pretty all-right looking kid. I don't know if he's going to be able to anchor that position and get after the quarterback, because that's kind of a thing your nose guard needs to do. But it'll be interesting to see what next year looks like. I don't think we're going to be necessarily big winners in Detroit. It's not what we do. But as long as we're bigger winners than the Chicago Bears, I'll be okay with this. Because who goes out for Russell Wilson and brings home a slightly used and armless Andy Dalton to the Windy City? If what is being said is true, Ryan Pace no longer has the keys to draft whoever he wants. He doesn't have the keys to the car anymore. Whoever's in charge, the owner of the Bears, is looking at Ryan Pace and going, yeah, I'm not going to let you sell the future, so guess what you get? Nothing. You don't get to work with next year's picks, because you might not be here next year. Oh, by the way, you should sell your house and start renting an apartment instead, because I don't think you're going to be here next year. Saying the same thing to Matt Nagy, too. How much can you actually blame Matt Nagy for Mitch Trubisky being Mitch Trubisky? I don't know. But you can blame him enough for, I don't know, being Matt Nagy, I guess. How do you make Mitch Trubisky look worse year after year? That's the one thing I gotta wonder. Every year he looked worse. Were you crushing the kid's confidence? Were you not coaching him? Like, not developing him at all? Doing the opposite of developing him? Just berating him constantly and abusing his little soul? I don't know. He's not a great talent. But he went to a city notorious for drafting quarterbacks and it not working out. But unlike, certain places that do draft quarterbacks and it works out, Los Angeles Chargers, at least the Bears go to Super Bowls and won one once. So take that, Chargers. That's what you get for having Dean Spanos. Nobody likes you, Spanos. So as we get ready for the NFL draft, I kind of want to get excycloned. See, it's like excited and cycloned all at the same time. I do want to get excited, though, for some Cyclones. I guess Kene Nwangu's getting some serious praise recently from the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Patriots, the Bears, I don't know. From a little bit of everybody who needs a kick returner who's speedy and can also run out of the backfield well enough to keep their job. And then Dylan Sainer is definitely going to get drafted at some point. I think most places I've seen have him drafted somewhere between the 5th and the 7th. Somebody's going to have to take a flyer on our dearly beloved Jaquan Bailey, all-time sack leader. Is Jaquan Bailey the end-all, be-all greatest football player? No, but he's the Iowa State sack leader, and that counts for something. He had a lot of production. He also got after the run. He was a 3-down defensive end. I saw some rating site said, he's a stand-up. He's a hand in the dirt or stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker. I guess you're only going off his body size. He's not a defensive line. He's not a linebacker. He's not a jackback. He's just not that. He is a defensive end, and he's a really solid one, at least for your first two downs in the NFL. He's big enough to get some. He's big enough to bully Oklahoma's Cody Ford, and Cody Ford is having a pretty good time in the NFL. He's big enough to bully Dalton Reisner. Dalton Reisner's having a pretty good time in the NFL. Jaquan Bailey should be an NFL player. There's just no other way to put it. And then you got Lawrence White, who, despite not having necessarily gigantic numbers, was a good safety for Iowa State. And we use a lot of safeties. But he always seemed to have a nose for the football towards the end of this last year. He had a couple good picks against Oklahoma State, and forget who else he got the other pick from. Might have been Oklahoma State again. But either way, Lawrence White, for all of his time as a safety, 4-year starter, has shown the ability to play safety. Somebody's going to take a chance on him. And I think he's going to be great in the NFL. He might not be, I don't even know. He might not be Brian Dawkins, but he sure will be a safety in the NFL. And that's really all you can expect out of a 3-star recruit. That's pretty good for a 3-star recruit, actually. So who knows? We'll see what this draft has to offer. I'm very excited for it, though. And I think I'm so excited for it because the FCS football we've been watching just hasn't been as fun. I'm excited for all our FBS football. I'm excited for Iowa State football. And I'm building up everything I can to just get pumped about it. So one of the other things that I have been considering is, what am I going to do for the Cy-Hawk game? Am I going to grill some corn and actually go to the game? I've got the season tickets. Do I want to go to the game? Or am I going to, sell them for way too much money? My wife had a friend who last year bought some tickets from a scalper for $500 a seat. Tickets were fake. Her and her friend dropped $1,000 for nothing. So how much are people willing to pay for the real tickets? Ooh, that's a good question. My seats should be lower bowl this year. They were last year. I got to watch Iowa State beat Oklahoma in Ames for the first time since 1968 in the lower bowl and scream my brains out the whole time. That little pop pass to Xavier Hutchinson, beautiful. Thing of beauty. Lovely RPO right there. I really want to watch that game again because that was a fun game. I don't know what next year's football is going to look like. I don't know what it's going to look like from the Lions. I don't know what it's going to look like from Iowa State. But I know I'm ready for it already. That's kind of a bad sign since it's already just only turned April. That means I got a lot of waiting to do. Baseball season's great. I'm very excited for it. I'm going on a trip to Kauffman Stadium to watch my beloved Detroit Tigers play the Kansas City Royals. Gonna eat some bad-for-me barbecue. Gonna eat a hot dog. Watch baseball. Fully vaccinated. It'll be great. But football's just king. After having that conversation with Levi, I had 3 or 4 days straight where I slept and I dreamt about football. And they were the most beautiful dreams. Dreams of football. One day real soon, we're going to be watching football in Jack Trice again. 100% capacity. It's going to feel so great, everybody. So I really want to build a listener component. So one of the things I wanted to do as a team, as a unit, on Twitter, I'm going to start putting out polls between this April episode and the May episode. With the April episode, which you're listening to right now, I was focused more on interviewing Levi because giving you guys more content is generally what I want to do. And I want to make the kind of content I want to watch. So that's what we're doing. I want to create fan engagement. I want to talk to you guys, and you guys have to talk to me. There are many ways we can do it. One of them will be on Twitter at Offsides, OFFCYDES, Offsides. One of the other things I'd like to do is maybe a YouTube poll here and there, maybe email bags, maybe just, meet and greets. once we get into the future where meeting people in face-to-face mode is normal again. I'm on Twitter at Offsides, OFFCYDES. I'm on YouTube. Name is OFF Sides, CYDES. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure. It's been a blast. We'll do it again next month.